Salam Malaysia Madani. Thanks for joining us. I'm Shuhaida Aivin and you're watching Updates at Noon. Making the headlines today. Drop in number of flood victims in Johor, no change in Sabah. Deadly wildfires continue to rage in Chile. The number of flood victims in Johor dropped to 420 people this morning compared to 506 last night, while in Sabah it remained at 46 as of 8 a.m. today. In Johor, the State Disaster Management Committee JPBN said 394 of the flood victims involving 110 families are still at 4 relief centres PPS in Batu Pahat, while the remaining 26 people are at 1 PPS in Segamat. In Sabah, the number of flood victims remain at 46 people involving 12 families and they are being accommodated at the PPS in Beaufort. Meanwhile, the Malaysian Meteorological Department Malaysia has issued a danger and severe level continuous rain warning for Pahang until tomorrow. A danger level warning was issued for Kuantan, while a severe level continuous rain warning was issued for Temerloh, Marat, Bera, Pekan and Rompin. In the warning notice issued at 5:50 a.m. today, Met Malaysia also forecasts continuous rain at the alert level until tomorrow for Kemaman, Terengganu, Lipis, Raub, Jerantut and Bentong in Pahang, Jempol, Negeri Sembilan, as well as Segamat, Kluang, Mersing and Kota Tinggi in Johor. The Ministry of Domestic Trade and Cost of Living KPDN has issued 60 notices involving 296 types of goods that have been inspected under Op Pasar in connection with rising vegetable prices. KPDN Enforcement Director Dato' Azman Adam said in a statement, checks revealed that the increase in vegetable prices was due to the monsoon season, the rise in the cost of inputs such as fertilizers, seeds and imported pesticides, currency exchange rates and shipping costs. He said KPDN viewed public complaints on the rising prices of goods, including vegetables, as reported by the media and on social media platforms seriously, adding that the ministry strives to tackle this issue through proactive actions and enforcement. The operations under Op Pasar are conducted in accordance with the Price Control Anti-Profiteering Act 2011, which is focused on tackling rising vegetable prices in the market. Azman said a total of 2,200 enforcement officers were mobilized to carry out price checks at premises across the country every day. Apart from the inspections, he said the KPDN conducted engagement sessions from time to time with the Ministry of Agriculture and Food Security and Trade to ensure a sufficient supply of vegetables in the market. Consumers can lodge complaints related to price issues to KPDN via WhatsApp or email to the number or address shown on the screen. The Malaysian Communications and Multimedia Commission MCMC blocked 6,381 online gambling websites from 2020 until the end of 2022 upon the official request from the Royal Malaysia Police PDRM. It said that a total of 212,399 telephone lines, including mobile and fixed lines, that sent dubious SMS spam like promoting online gambling, unlicensed loans and others were also terminated during that period. Following a Consumer Association's request for online gambling platforms to be regulated, MCMC is always committed to supporting PDRM enforcement actions to crack down on online gambling activities that are subject to the Common Gaming Houses Act 1953. The Commission said the PDRM carries out actions and enforcement, while the MCMC's role is to provide technical assistance to them, including the provision of information and the blocking of gambling websites based on requests from the police. According to the MCMC, in addition to the enforcement actions, prosecutions or sanctions, self-awareness, education and self-control are also vital in efforts to combat online gambling. It said that users in general can also play a role in efforts to block online gambling promotion activities by reporting to the MCMC the promotion of gambling advertisements received by SMS so that online cancellation can be carried out with the cooperation of telecommunications service providers. The Road Transport Department JPJ has detected a widespread scam in the forgery of fake driving licenses, which is still prevalent on social media to this day. As such, JPJ Deputy Director General Management M. Janagarajan has appealed to drivers to exercise more caution in obtaining driving licenses and not become victims of forged licenses, or which are more popularly known, flying licenses, because they are non-valid. Explaining further, Janagarajan said that the forged license has no record nor does it exist in the JPJ system, and if a driver obtained license by this means, he or she doesn't actually own a valid license. Janagarajan said his department has identified many victims of license scammers, and action is being taken through the JPJ's Driving Licensing Integrity Department. He said the modus operandi of these scammers is to offer advertisement on social media saying that the document is a valid license when in fact it is not valid. He said that through cooperation with the Malaysian Communications and Multimedia Commission MCMC and police, court action would be taken against suspects who scam the public. In our foreign segment, Iran's supreme leader pardons a large number of prisoners linked to protests. Hundreds of wildfires scorching southern and central Chile have left at least 23 people dead and hundreds more injured and displaced from their homes. The latest death toll came from the country's SNAP disaster response agency, which added that emergency alerts were sent to another region as firefighters combat the flames. The raging fires have injured nearly 1,000 of people and pushed more than 1,100 to seek shelter as authorities assessing damage to more than 560 homes. In the town of Santa Juana in the Biobío region, south of the capital Santiago, videos show the trees engulfing by orange columns of fire and billowing smoke. Residents helped the firefighters douse flames and others cleared charred debris. Among the deaths reported by local media outlets were a mechanic and a pilot after their helicopter, which was helping put out a blaze, crashed in the Araucania region. Thousands of acres of land were destroyed in regions that are home to tracts of farm and forest land. Officials said an intense summer heat wave in the South American country hindered efforts to contain the fires, with warnings of temperatures reaching over 40 degrees Celsius. Republicans lashed into Joe Biden on Sunday over his handling of the suspected Chinese spy balloon, while Democrats defended the president's decision to shoot it down after it floated across the United States for days, further straining tight relations with Beijing.
The United States.
With efforts to retrieve balloon debris continuing off the South Carolina coast one day after a U.S. fighter jet downed a large airship, the incident sparked a fiery debate over Biden's dealing with the matter and how U.S.-Chinese ties might suffer. Marco Rubio, vice chair of the Senate Intelligence Committee, said on CNN that the president's delay in alerting the public to the balloon's presence amounted to dereliction of duty. He described the overflight as a brazen effort by Beijing to embarrass Biden just before his State of the Union address on Tuesday and to disrupt a since-cancelled China visit by Secretary of State Antony Blinken. Democrats quickly pushed back, calling the Republican criticisms premature and political. Chuck Schumer, the Senate Democratic leader, insisted the administration had made the right call. Pentagon officials on Friday described the airship as a high-altitude surveillance balloon, adding that Washington had taken steps to block it from collecting sensitive information.
No shit, Paul.
Iran's supreme leader has pardoned tens of thousands of prisoners, including some arrested in recent anti-government protests, state media reported on Sunday, after a deadly state crackdown helped quell the nationwide unrest. However, the pardon approved by Ayatollah Ali Khamenei came with conditions that the measure would not apply to any of the numerous dual nationals held in Iran. State news agency IRNA said those accused of corruption unearthed a capital charge brought against some protesters, 4 of whom have been executed, would also not be pardoned. Neither would it apply to those charged with spying for foreign agencies or those affiliated with groups hostile to the Islamic Republic. Iran was swept by protests following the death of a young Iranian Kurdish woman in the custody of the country's morality police last September. Iranians from all walks of life took part, marking one of the boldest challenges of the Islamic Republic since 1979 revolution. According to the kerana activist news agency, about 20,000 people have been arrested in connection with the protests, which the authorities accuse Iran's foreign enemies of fomenting. Rights groups say over 500 have been killed in the crackdown, including 70 minors. At least 4 people have been hanged, according to the Iranian judiciary. Ukraine is set to replace Defense Minister Oleksiy Reznikov with the chief of its military spy agency, a close ally of President Volodymyr Zelensky said on Sunday in a reshuffle at the refront of Ukraine's war campaign. David Arakamia, a senior lawmaker and chief of servant of the People Parliamentary Bloc, said Reznikov would be transferred to another ministerial job and replaced by Kirilo Budanov, head of the GUR Military Intelligence Agency. Arakamia said that Ukraine's force agencies, like the Defense Ministry, should not be headed by politicians but by career defense or security officials. Asked earlier at a news conference about media reports of his possible exit from the ministry, Reznikov told reporters that any decision was up to Zelensky. Reznikov's ministry has lately been beset by corruption scandals, and defense officials were among a dozen figures forced to resign last month in the biggest political shake-up in Ukraine since the launch of Moscow's assault. Reznikov's deputy, Vyacheslav Shapovalov, who worked in providing logistical support for the army, resigned after the defense ministry was accused of signing food contracts at prices 2 to 3 times higher than current rates for basic foodstuffs. Mali's ruling junta said that it was expelling the heads of the Human Rights Division of MINUSMA, the UN mission there, giving him 48 hours to leave the country. The decision comes after a Malayan rights activist last month denounced the security situation in the country in a speech to a UN gathering and accused the regime's new Russian military partners of serious rights violations. The Foreign Ministry had declared Guillaume Ngafa Atonodok Andali, head of MINUSMA's Human Rights Section, persona non grata, said a statement issued by government spokesman Colonel Abdoulaye Maiga. This measure comes after the destabilizing and subversive actions of Monsieur Andali, added the statement, which was also read out on national television news. Andali had taken it upon himself to decide who were the representatives of civil society, ignoring the authorities and national institutions. MINUSMA was set up in 2013 to try to stabilize Mali in the face of the growing threat from jihadist fighters. Its mission also included the protection of civilians, contributing to peace efforts and defending human rights. But the security situation has continued to deteriorate in the West African country. The military regime has repeatedly blocked MINUSMA's attempts to investigate growing reports of human rights abuses carried out by the armed forces. Ecuadorians voted in a referendum on Sunday that will decide whether or not to allow extraditions of citizens linked to organized crime in a country rocked by a dramatic increase in violence. Currently, the extradition of Ecuadorians is prohibited by the South American country's institution. But Conservative President Guillaume Lasso has proposed legalizing it as means of dealing with a crime wave that has claimed the lives of 2 candidates in local elections being held alongside the referendum. Ecuador is sandwiched between Colombia and Peru, the world's two largest cocaine producers, and has itself become a hub for the global drug trade in recent years. Despite not having any major drug plantations or cartels of its own, nor big laboratories for refining cocaine, the United States has listed Ecuador among the top 22 drug-producing or transit countries in the world. Drugs produced elsewhere are shipped from Ecuador's Guayaquil port of the United States, Europe and Asia. This has resulted in a bloody territorial war between gangs, some with ties to Mexican cartels, according to the authorities, who brutally kill each other on the streets and in Ecuador's overcrowded jails. Thousands of people gathered in Copenhagen on Sunday to protest a bill put forward by the government to scrap a public holiday to help finance increased defense spending. The demonstration was organized by the country's biggest labor unions, which opposed abolishing the Great Prayer Day, a Christian holiday that falls on the fourth Friday after Easter and dates back to 1686. Unions organizing the protest estimated at least 50,000 people took part, which would make it Denmark's biggest demonstration in more than a decade. The holiday abolition was proposed in December to help raise tax revenues for higher defense spending in wake of the Ukraine war and is part of the newly formed government's sweeping reform program aimed at overcoming challenges to the country's welfare model. The government has proposed moving forward by 3 years to 2030, a goal of meeting a NATO defense spending target of 2% of GDP. It says most of the extra $654 million needed to meet the target could be covered by the higher tax revenues it anticipates from abolishing the holiday. However, some economists have said it is unlikely to have long-lasting effects as workers would find other ways to adjust their working hours. A small group of protesters gathered outside the Hong Kong court, where the city's largest national security trial was set to begin today. The trial is the largest to date under a national security law Beijing imposed on the city in 2020 that has been used to crush dissent. Saying that crackdown is shameless, as well as calls for the immediate release of all political prisoners, were the things heard during the protest. Another protester was seen raising a fist in solidarity as a large number of police stood nearby. The law transformed Hong Kong, ending a culture of boisterous demonstrations and outspoken politics and remolding China's freest city to more closely resemble the authoritarian mainland. The 47 dependents, including some of the city's most prominent activists, as well as legal scholars and former lawmakers. They face up to life in prison if convicted of conspiracy to commit subversion. Both the supporters and critics had queued outside the court, some overnight, in the hopes of seeing the proceeding begins. Harry Kane said becoming Tottenham's all-time record scorer was a magical moment as his 267th goal for the club sealed a 1-0 win against Manchester City that severely damaged by championship bid to retain the Premier League title. Kane's historic first-half strike at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium took him past Jimmy Greaves into sole possession of the Haaland record. Kane's landmark moment also made him only the third player to score 200 Premier League goals after Alan Shearer 260 and Wayne Rooney 208.
Harry Kane is football. In his DNA, you can feel, you can smell that every time he can show the best football you can see. To compare one player like Harry Kane to the top in the history, you have to wait the end of his career. But we want to enjoy every day to see him like we do normally, and into the pitch, out of the pitch, during the training, when he speak with the player, when he speak with the manager. He showed football, you can understand in every moment.
Kane's 19th goal in all competition this season leaves second-place City trailing 5 points behind Arsenal, who have a game in hand and host Pep Guardiola's man in a crucial clash on 15 Februari.
On behalf of Manchester City, I can say congratulations for this incredible milestone. He's an exceptional player, not just a top goal scorer. So, and yeah, congratulations for this.
Bayern Munich scored 3 times in a stellar 10-minute spell in the first half to battle past host VfL Wolfsburg 4-2 on Sunday, ending their 3-game winless run in the league and reclaiming the top spot. The Bavarians went into the match with club bosses locked in a public spat, with injured keeper Manuel Neuer over the sacking last week of his close friend, goalkeeping coach Toni Tapalovic, and 3 consecutive 1-1 league draws since the season started in January. At the far post from a pinpoint João Cancelo cross. Bayern made it 3-0 5 minutes later through Müller, who equalised the late Gerd Müller's all-time club record for Abraham Ansar wrapped up a historic win at the PIF Saudi International on Sunday, becoming the first player to go wire-to-wire at the Royal Greens Golf and Country Club. The flawless Mexican, who had just a 2 bogey over his 72 holes this week, shot a final round 2 under par 68 to finish on 19 under overall, 2 strokes ahead of Cameron Young. Lucas Herbert's 5 under 65 lifted him into 3rd on 15 under, while the low rounds of the day belonged to Andy Ogletree and James Piot, who both carded 7 under. Ogletree, who was playing in a group alongside Hong Kong's Matthew Cheung and Jediah Morgan from Australia, lifted himself into solo 9th. As a result, 8 shots back from Ansar. Cheung, meanwhile, struggled and finished 1 over in his final round. It dropped him to 3 under overall and in tie for 46 in a group, including Chinese amateur Ding Wenyi. The same could not be said for Ding, who also shot a 71 and let his frustration show afterwards. Young now heads to back-to-back elevated events on the PGA Tour in Phoenix and Los Angeles. Ansar, who joined LIV last summer, has 2 weeks off before LIV Golf begins its 2nd season. Great Britain's Charlotte Banks and France Merle Serge showed their class under the floodlights in Cortina d'Ampezzo to secure snowboard cross World Cup wins in the latest stop on the tour. 35. In the men's final, Glenn de Blois of the Netherlands started well but crashed out after jumping too far and losing balance. Snowboard and Free Ski World Championship in Bakuriani from 18 February to 5th March. The ocean race leaders have suffered a major setback as their sail ripped on the 2nd leg of the round-the-world race. Apart from the Spinnaker issue, Geo Environment Team Europe has seen its lead steadily erode over the past 24 hours as their opposition to the West is in a better pressure and making faster miles to the south. Geo Environment fell back into last place after the damage to their Spinnaker, the large but fragile sail that enables fast-downing sailing in light winds. Skipper Robert Sanjak said they were sailing under Spinnaker at about 15 knots of speed before the kite broke. He added that they were surprised because it was not that windy and the sail tore almost from top to foot. However, Sanjak said the whole team did a good job to overcome the crisis. The recovery took just 10 minutes, but without the Spinnaker, the team cannot sail to optimum performance in lighter airs downwind. 11th Hour Racing Team are the new leaders as the 5 competing boats turn east to cross the Atlantic. The second of the 7 legs started in Mindelo on the Cabo Verde island of São Vicente and finishes 4,600 nautical miles later in South Africa's Cape Town. The ocean race started in the Spanish port of Alicante on 15 January and will finish sometime in June in Italy's Genoa. Alright, so that concludes today's edition of Updates at Noon. In our top story, dropped the number of flood victims in Johor, no change in Sabah. We leave you with visuals from India's Rural Olympics, where a blend of accepting sporting disciplines and other more unusual pursuits dazzle spectators. To that, I'm Shuhaida Arifin. Thank you for watching.